welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
This is Jessikah at Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast, and my library co-host is...
Hello, I'm Jen.
And we are super excited today because I have to admit, this is one of my bucket list interview wishes. So it's very appropriate for numerous reasons that this is dropping the Thursday before Christmas Day, because this is like unwrapping a gift that I'm so excited about. And also the guest we have today is, aside from one of my favorite parts of one of my favorite music duos and a big gamer, they are working on a musical.
True.
Which it's true. So why don't you introduce yourself? I've been talking enough about this.
Yes, hello. My name is Laser Malena-Weber. I am a writer and musician. I'm in a band called the Doubleclicks with my sister Aubrey. We write songs about cats, dinosaurs, and queer feelings. And I also just released the album for Teaching a Robot to Love, which is a musical, a sci-fi musical, a queer retelling of Frankenstein that also explores non-binary identity about a robot who wants to become a person, that I wrote. Yeah, that's me. I'm Laser. I'm cool.
Welcome, Laser.
Thank you.
So today, aside from the fact that I just kind of want to put out there that Cats and Netflix, both the song and then the literal things sort of helped me get through the beginning of the pandemic.
Oh, thank you.
Because sometimes those were the only things we could handle. Before we get into teaching a robot to love, literally and figuratively, did you want to talk a little bit about just how you and your sister got started and with your music?
Sure. The Doubleclicks started, back basically 2009 to 2011. We picked up, Aubrey plays cello. She'd already played cello for a long time. I picked up a guitar and just started writing kind of silly songs about Dungeons and Dragons and World of Warcraft and stuff like that. And we brought them out to a weekly open mic. And it turned out to be really fun because it was different than what everybody else was doing there. And then we kind of needed more material. So we challenged ourselves to release a song every week on YouTube. And that is where we found a lot of our audience and began touring to conventions, to libraries, to game stores, just kind of doing things our weird own way. And we fund our music through crowdfunding, Patreon and Kickstarter, and have an incredible, wonderful audience. And we're very lucky that we're able to do it. I think we've released like 7 or 8 albums now, and we write silly songs and meaningful songs and have a really good time doing it.
Yeah, I'm really curious about the Song a Week challenge that you did, and I'm wondering what that process was like. Did you have ideas front loaded, or did you come up with a song I'm wondering about what your writing process was like to create songs that quickly.
Yeah, we still do it sometimes. I find that it's really easy to get in your own way with perfectionism. There's, it's easy to start things and really hard to finish them. I'm sure that authors you talk to have the same situation. Everybody has 2 chapters of a novel somewhere. I have 2 chapters of a novel somewhere, but having that deadline of every week you have to finish something makes it so that you don't get to decide whether it's going to be good. You just have to make it done. And that is a big philosophy that I have in my life, that I'd rather have 50 finished things, 2 of which are good, than a bunch of unfinished things, none of which are good because none of them are done. So we never really had, I have notes on my phone and in journals that are ideas, but you run out of those pretty quick and just kind of have to start mining for inspiration. And honestly, that's the best thing you can do. It turns out that desperation and a deadline are actually not terrible places to go for creativity. Structure often really helps. Whether it's the structure of a song or the structure of a tight deadline, to get something out. You just find that you have to do it, and the less like freedom that you have of infinite possibility, the more you kind of have to, what lines to color inside so that you can do it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think finishing things with people who are creative with creatives is just sort of, for lack of a better phrase, an Achilles heel.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, I have this idea, and you kind of get started, and then it's a matter of everything else gets in the way. But whereas, and I'm sure Jen can agree with this, if I'm in a silly mood and I'm just going to make up a song about my cat, like it usually just comes out very naturally.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I guess you're sort of not worried 100% whether or not, that's going to, you kind of have to think in the moment.
Yeah, you have to let go of the reaction of the audience as well. And I think that was something that was really wonderful back at the beginning. We didn't have, the experience of 10 years of mean internet comments, but also I think that being able to clear your mind of so much because you just have to, because you're on a deadline and because you're, self-imposed creative restrictions, it's kind of nice. Just like do it for yourself and do it fast and finish it, and grow within the boundaries that you set for yourself. It's really nice.
Yeah. Do you feel like that process, because of the time constraints, tamed the inner critic a little bit, perhaps? Did you get a little bit less concerned with evaluating quality as you went, and just started, creating? Or
Oh, for sure, definitely. I mean, to contrast that with the musical that we just finished, it didn't have as tight of a deadline because of the pandemic. Everything got pushed and pushed and pushed. We weren't able to record with our cast for, a year longer than we expected. So I had an extra year basically to write this musical, which meant that I had an extra year to be like, oh, it's not good enough. Oh, I have to rewrite it. I have to rewrite it. I have to rewrite it. I have to start over. I have to, it took forever. And I think ultimately it is better because of all of those things. But without eventually just setting a deadline, it would never have been finished. And it was a horrible experience to be like,
oh, no!
It has to be finished. It has to be perfect. It has to be perfect. You have to rewrite everything until it's perfect. And I haven't had to deal with that for a long time because this, the musical is 2 hours long. A song is 3 minutes, and 3 minutes is a lot easier to finish than in 2 hours.
So wait a second. So what I want to know now is, was the musical born before the pandemic, or was this kind of something that brewed within the monotony of those early pandemic days?
Yeah, the musical, actually, the concept of it came late 2019. We had a version of it done in written, or I had a version of it written in February 2020. And that's when we kind of kicked it off and got a Kickstarter to record it. But then it was March 2020 and we couldn't do anything with it. So we just kind of had, a year and a half to polish it up after that. So it went from this 45-minute kind of mini concept album to a full 2-hour musical with an intermission and all more characters and a lot more themes and all of this stuff. It didn't start inside the pandemic, but it certainly grew, and I think became a lot, I think more time really helped make it something that we never would have done otherwise.
So how did you get a cast together for it?
I'm lucky enough to, I moved down to Los Angeles specifically to be around more creative people who are dedicated and awesome. And I've been here for maybe 4 years and have a lot of really incredible friends. And when we started putting this cast together, I just kind of looked around at them, and they were people that I had brought in to do test readings of the musical, thinking like it would be really fun to hear Amy read the part of Fawn. It would be really fun to hear Lisa read the part of, and when they did those parts, it turned out it was like, okay, well, this is perfect. This is great. I don't have to look any further because they're awesome. The last part we cast was our villain, and who is Zach Reno from the Off Book podcast, and he's been on a bunch of TV, and he just wrote a bunch of songs for the new Baking It show with Maya Rudolph and Andy Samberg. He's incredible.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. But we were like, well, dream, we'd like to have him, and he's amazing. But yeah, these are folks that I knew in Los Angeles. I mean, we couldn't hold auditions. It was the middle of the pandemic. So, but we wanted a really wonderful cast. We wanted a group of people there are a lot of really awesome queer characters in the musical, and we wanted the cast to represent, a full LGBTQIA spectrum. So there's a character who is Ace. There are a couple of non-binary characters, lots of queer stuff going on. And, it was really fun to be able to bring in people who are so talented, and that also we're really excited about it.
Yeah, that's very cool. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what your process with the Kickstarter was like, because I do remember reading that it was the most successful music Kickstarter based out of Portland at the time, I believe. And I'm wondering what your process was like for that.
Yes. So our first Kickstarter was the most successful Portland Kickstarter. That was back in 2014. We're every time we do an album nowadays, we launch Kickstarter because that's the best way for us to do that. The reason that I believe very strongly in Kickstarter is that I don't think that art is a product. I think it's an exchange. Two librarians nodding sagely.
Yeah.
Art is something that we should all have access to, but it's also it's not able to be created because we live in a capitalist society, unfortunately, without resources. So to us, art is an exchange of goodwill and between us and our community. And so a Kickstarter is a chance for us to say to our community, hey, we want to make this art. We can't do it without your help. Can you help us make it happen? Because we could never make the art if the only income we were getting was, Spotify streams or even iTunes or, touring income after the venue gets a cut, and some people can't access venues and some people aren't in cities, whatever. So that's why we use Kickstarter. We were very fortunate that our first Kickstarter, we asked for $18,000 and we made $80,000. It enabled both of us to make music our full-time job, instead of having to freelance or do other work. Aubrey quit her day job, and we keep doing that. I actually have a little business on the side where I teach classes to creatives who want to run Kickstarter. So I have a bajillion opinions about this, but basically it comes down to not hoarding your content, not hoarding your art as if it's a product, because it's not, giving it to people, making it accessible, making it, accessible to everyone. And then asking the people who want to keep making it happen to keep making it happen, and don't be ashamed to say, like, I can't do it without, what the capitalism needs.
Yeah, and I feel like, that process by which you get support from Kickstarter, but then make your music freely available, also creates a community. And it's also the people who support you financially also help to make that music available for everybody. And I think that's a really interesting way of creating an artistic community. And
oh yeah, and it makes it more available to like kids and families and people who don't have credit cards and people who are in different countries and stuff like that. Like, we just did a live stream while we were packing velociraptors, because that's something that we just did. We just made a velociraptor plush,
which is adorable, by the way.
Thank you so much.
Cute.
And we just streamed the whole record on YouTube and Twitch while doing it. It's just like, here the whole thing is, right? And like, we would love for everybody to hear it. And it's fun because we get to all listen to it together. And we're not putting it behind a paywall. We're not making it Patreon exclusive because it's like, let's just all do it. Let's make it easy. Like, I'm obsessed. I used to be a journalist, and it was, my whole job was how difficult it is to contact people. It's really hard to get the word out. And I just want to make it as easy as possible for people to listen to our music, to contact us, for us to contact them, because it's, why not, I guess.
So writing your musical, so talk a little bit about the storyline and just how you decided to, I know you had mentioned it's very, very loosely based on like a Frankenstein type story. And there's a robot character in it, obviously. So talk a little bit about just how all of that grew, and how all of the characters came together from something very small to become something full cast.
Yeah. So the first song we wrote for the musical is a song called Normal Human Party, which is a song about throwing a party for normal humans and being like, I just want to make normal humans happy, and for everybody to think that I'm a normal human and I'm fitting in. It was not it's not necessarily about a robot initially. It, like every song in the musical, is just about, my feelings. But I think it's really interesting to, I love how sci-fi explores the human experience. And I think a lot of us, especially people who aren't, the majority in power, a straight white man with, property owning, like rich people. I think we all kind of get drawn to fantasy and sci-fi because it's a way to see a possible different future. And the thing that I wanted to use sci-fi for here was to look at what we define as being a human and what we define as being normal, and who gets to decide that, and who gets to decide whether you're changing and whether you're accepting somebody as a human and whether you're accepting somebody as normal. So the story is about this woman named Mary. It's all a bunch of interns at a college intern experience, kind of in a fictional San Francisco. And she really she doesn't care about fitting in because she never has, but she really wants to be successful by creating an awesome program and getting a great job. And the program that she's asked to create is the next amazing, like Amazon Alexa, basically, like something that's really good at selling stuff. And she creates an amazing selling program. And in order to make it the best, she uses a human brain as a hard drive, and it becomes sentient. And then the robot, and then she gets fired because the robot doesn't want to be a capitalist. And then the robot wants body, and Mary's roommate, who is also in love with her, is a kind of mad scientist biology intern named Fawn. And there are, the evil interns on the other team, and they're doing their own thing, and they're not really evil, but they're just, they have different success conditions. Everybody has their own success conditions, and then there is one evil capitalist in it. And it's a musical about changing and accepting that people aren't always going to be what you wanted them to be, and it's okay. It was really fun to write.
So human.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly.
I have to ask though, Mary, is that like a nod to Mary Shelley?
Yeah, her name's Mary Coral.
Awesome.
Yes.
I love that so much. And of course, like my librarian senses were just like, we're only using the audio for this, but I'm making little feelers on the top of my
I'm really
head.
happy.
Yeah.
Like, I was really like, when is somebody gonna bring that up to me? Because like it's so obvious, and I'm like, yeah, librarian podcast. Heck yeah, happen.
Of course. Yeah. It's so funny when things like that happen. I forget who I was talking to. I was talking to an author, and she used a lot of mythology names in her book, and I was just like, oh, was that intentional? And she's like, it absolutely was, but nobody's asked me that yet.
Yep. Oh, that makes me really happy.
I love normal human parties so much. I find it so relatable. You're welcome. And something that I find super interesting, just sort of like throughout sci-fi, is that oftentimes our most poignant investigations of what it means to be human don't happen with human characters. And I'm wondering if that was intentional, and what was your approach to exploring humanity through this non-human character?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I wanted to be really careful with that, because there's a big trope of like characters who are, especially this is like a kind of a story about, honestly, my transition, right? And it's a non-binary character, and there is a very big trope of non-binary characters being played by robots, or that's the only character who gets to be genderless. But also I think robots are awesome, probably because there have been so many non-binary characters played by robots. Anyway, but it's I think that the advantage of having a robot character, I've been thinking about this a lot, is that you don't have any of the other baggage of humanity with that inside the story, right? You can just kind of tell this one part of like, this is about deciding how to fit in to the world, and whether you want, like, about the identity without having the history of birth and trauma and your and childhood and all of those things that you really need to address when you're talking about a human character, right? You get to kind of have this like blank slate on this artificial intelligence character, because they are something that was just created and suddenly had a brain and gets to have that experience. And I think it's, metaphors have always been a really fascinating way for us to examine, from the beginning, from Mary Shelley, right? For us to examine how we treat each other and how we examine ourselves. It was really fun to play the robot, because I really like robots. The robot is the only character I've ever played on a stage. I've never been in a real play, but I got to, like, in drama club one time, I got to play a robot, and it was like really fun to get to play another one. There's a big dynamic in this musical about basically the people who create this robot, Miss Mary and Fawn, and kind of metaphor for parenting a trans person, and how it can feel like a loss, and it can feel like change, but also saying that to somebody's face is horrible and traumatic for that person, right? And that is really an interesting thing that I have been learning over the last year. And a lot of this musical is stuff that I have been learning over the last year, of like the empathy of looking at it from somebody else's point of view, of like, even when it's like, when it's not, it doesn't feel like it should be about that person. It is, you have to kind of accept everybody's feelings. And I think that taking it out of reality a little bit and putting it in a sci-fi world makes it a little bit easier for everybody to digest. Especially me, is like, well, I needed you to be my sales algorithm, not like I needed you to be my son, like, which is horrible. Like, it's just like the thing you shouldn't say to a person. But it, if you needing somebody to be a sales algorithm is a little bit weirder, and something that we can all kind of understand why that's not okay.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
So well put too, like in just a really a way to kind of follow that thread. And I think, again, that kind of goes back to just how sci-fi is sort of a good way of telling real stories, but taking you out enough so it's almost like you're looking at it from the top, from like the top of a building, and just kind of watching everything unfold. And while you might not consider certain things when you're directly face to face with a situation. You're watching everything from the bird's eye view and you're just like, oh, okay, now you kind of see the effect and how it, waves out, and how it's this and that. So first of all, if people want to access Teaching a Robot to Love, where can they get everything, including an adorable velociraptor, Stuffy?
Yes, the Velociraptor, the musical, everything is at thedoubleclicks.com. Right now, only the music is out because we are in the process of workshopping and putting on a stage production of the musical. So there isn't a final version of the script. Some of our Kickstarter backers have seen some workshop versions of it, which has been really fun, but we're hoping to get that out. And of course, when it exists, we'll try to get it to as many people as possible. But yeah, check out the music. It's really good. I'm very proud of it. I worked with the incredible Erin Wilson on the songs. The cast is amazing. So yeah, Teaching a Robot to Love, the original cast recording is on every place you listen to music. Please don't feel bad about streaming it for free wherever you listen to it. And then yeah, if you want to check out the doubleclicks.com, we have CDs and robot pins in non-binary flag colors and a velociraptor that you can hug. It's made to hug.
So just one thing, because I know Jen had mentioned loving a Normal Human Party. That just to me feels like the song we all need coming out of the pandemic. I don't know how to talk to people anymore. At all.
Much. I've had that big feeling of like, am I doing it right? How many times do I ask a question? Do I look into your face? I'm so sorry. I don't remember. Like, I feel like I had spent 30 years learning how to interact with humans, and then I just lost it all. So yeah, it's okay. Sometimes just narrating is fine.
That's true. Yep. Yeah, and I think everybody is kind of experiencing it at the same time, and there is some strange camaraderie in that, I think.
Yeah, my the best advice I got was just set a deadline on your hangouts for the first few weeks. Like, we're gonna go hang out for 45 minutes, or so that nobody at the end, you don't have to be like, are we still doing it? Are we having a good time? I don't know what to do now. Like, have another plan, so you have to go home and feed your cat or something.
Oh man, it just, in some weird way now, I'm thinking about Anya from Buffy when she's like selling things and she's just like, here's your stuff, please leave. Like, you have to be a little bit more, friendly. Well, no, I have their money. I don't need anything anymore. Going back to capitalism. But just that whole idea of like, how do I end a conversation? And it just is so awkward. Like, do I just walk away? Do I say, okay, I'm going to go now? Because it was so simple. It became so simple in like the Zoomverse, where you're just like, okay, well, I'm going to log off now. Or somebody's burning something in the kitchen and you can hear the oven. I'm going to leave now. But then when you're like in front of somebody, how do you just end that?
Yep.
I don't know. We'll figure it out together.
Yep.
All right. Well, I cannot wait to see the final product of the play. And please come back anytime to talk about anything.
Oh, thank you. This was a really, really fun time. Thank you for getting my references. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. All right. So once again, this was Jessica with Syosset Libraries Podcast. My librarian co-host was
Jen.
And our guest was
Laser from the Doubleclicks.
And we are going to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.